Coming up today, with the general election exactly 4 weeks away, South Korea's political parties are jostling for position. We have the latest. The United States says it's working closely with China to ensure international sanctions on North Korea are implemented effectively. Beijing is said to be nervous about Pyongyang's reckless behavior. Plus, in the race to the White House, John Kasich scores his first win in his home state of Ohio. Donald Trump rolls on, winning Florida, leaving Marco Rubio no option but to call time on his run. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton has a great day. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Wednesday, the 16th of March. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We are going to start with news that President Park Geun-hye will travel to Washington later this month to attend the fourth and final Nuclear Security Summit. More than 50 world leaders and the heads of international organizations like the UN and the International Atomic Energy Agency will be present to discuss countermeasures against the threat of nuclear terrorism and to adopt a joint communique. On the sidelines of the summit, President Park is also slated to hold a handful of summit talks. This will include trilateral talks with US President Barack Obama and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, where North Korea's nuclear issues are likely to dominate discussions. President Park will then fly to Mexico City for summit talks with her Mexican counterpart Enrique Peña Nieto. The two countries will agree upon ways to enhance cooperation in various sectors, ranging from ICT to security and education. There are now just 4 weeks remaining before Koreans head to the polls for the general election, and the political manoeuvring is starting to kick up a gear now. The minor opposition People's Party has gained a new member, giving it the ability to form a parliamentary negotiation bloc with 20 lawmakers. Representative Jung Ho-jun joined the party today after defecting from the main opposition Minju Party of Korea on Tuesday. Jung said he left because the party didn't nominate him to compete in the general election on April 13th. Also, on this Wednesday, People's Party co-leader Chun Jung-bae promised to prevent the ruling Saenuri Party from gaining a majority in parliament. He and senior party member Kim Han-gil have been advocating for a merger with the main opposition party, but have continued to wrestle with party co-founder Ahn Cheol-soo over that decision. Meanwhile, the ruling Saenuri Party officials there are expected to make an announcement this afternoon on the addition of some big political heavyweights to their candidate lists. The head of the US Treasury has stressed that the US and Chinese governments are discussing measures to effectively implement sanctions against North Korea. He said Beijing fully supports the UN's toughest ever punitive measures against Pyongyang. Park Jung-hong reports.
Sanctions on North Korea would only be, quote, theory until you implement them. Those were the words of U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew, who told the House Appropriations Committee in Washington on Tuesday that the U.S. is working hard to make sure the new UN Security Council sanctions on North Korea are implemented. To that end, Lew said the U.S. has been holding talks with China and at present acting under Secretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence Adam Zubin is in China for such discussions. Secretary Lew stressed that Beijing's support of the tough sanctions was very significant. While in China for G20 meetings the week after the UN Security Council adopted the resolution against the North, Lew said he had direct conversations at the highest levels. He made it clear that China doesn't view its support for the sanctions as something it's doing for the U.S. In fact, Lew said the Chinese authorities genuinely feel uneasy about North Korea's behavior and find some of Pyongyang's actions reckless and destabilizing. He explained that is why China supported the UN Security Council resolution in the first place and indicated its intention to implement it. He said that China's taking part in the international effort sends a significant statement to North Korea. Secretary Liu also pointed out that implementing the sanctions takes sustained efforts, such as verifying the blacklisted entities and taking the necessary action. Park Jung-hong, Arirang News.
The United States has downplayed North Korea's claim that has developed an operational nuclear warhead tipped intercontinental ballistic missile. Pentagon Press Secretary Peter Cook says Washington highly doubts North Korea has the ability to develop such an ICBM, but added the U.S. is fully prepared to cope with any provocation launched by the regime. He said the U.S. is working in close coordination with South Korea and Japan to better counter threats posed by Pyongyang. Now, South Korea is a pretty grim place these days for young graduates looking to find a decent job, and it appears to be getting worse, unfortunately. Last month, the nation's youth unemployment rate hit its highest level since related records started being collected 17 years ago. Hwang Jie reports.
The jobless rate among Korea's young people reached 12.5% in February. That's the highest figure the country has posted since 1999, when related data was first compiled. Statistics Korea says the number of unemployed between 15 to 29 years of age stood at 560,000, up 76,000 from the same month a year ago. The agency cites seasonal factors coupled with an increase in the number of people jumping into the workforce for the sharp rise. The economic activity participation rate among young people rose 1.2% last month from a year earlier. The agency also says the rise in the number of applicants taking the civil service entrance exam pushed up the youth unemployment rate, as most of the candidates fall under the age bracket. It says that factor alone raised the jobless rate by 0.5 percentage point. The overall growth in the number of employed also slowed last month, rising 223,000 compared to the previous year. It marks the slowest pace of growth in 10 months and marks a sharp slowdown from the 339,000 increase posted in January. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Now, as it seems to be the way of the world these days, the rich are getting richer here in Korea. Korea is #1 in Asia, in fact, when it comes to the percentage of income held by the top 10% of earners. This is according to a new report. The country's income gap, however, is not as pronounced as other countries in the region. Kim Min-ji reports.
Korea's highest paid people earn almost half of the nation's total income. According to the IMF, the top 10% of earners held 45% of the nation's income as of 2013, putting Korea at the top of the list among Asian countries. The number has been moving steadily upward from the 29% recorded in 1995. It's a significant jump considering that other Asian countries saw their shares rise between 1% and 2% on average during the same period. Singapore ranks second with 42%, followed by Japan and New Zealand. But on a brighter note, Korea's Gini coefficient, which measures inequality in terms of income gap, was relatively lower than that of its Asian counterparts. In 1990, the figure stood at 32, and by 2013, it had edged down slightly to 31. Although it's not a big drop, what's noteworthy is that the corresponding figure for China jumped from 33 to 53 during the same period, while Indonesia's went from 45 to 51. The IMF noted that in Korea there has been less movement between social classes due to the rapidly aging population and the sizable wage gap between regular and temporary workers, as well as gender discrimination in the workplace. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, it could be a few years, maybe decades, before some of our daily lives and routines, like driving, are handled by artificial intelligence, or AI. Many researchers believe it is one of the most important advancements for our future, but it's still uncharted territory that raises some serious concerns. And as our Kim Ji-yeon reports, there's a real need to develop a legal mechanism around AI while it's still in its early stages.
DeepMind, which developed Hadoop or Go playing computer program AlphaGo, started with 3 young men in Britain in 2010. 4 years later, the startup developed artificial intelligence and then instantly became billionaires after DeepMind was acquired by Google.
The startup environment was one of the best anywhere in the world, as creative ideas and various technologies lead to new jobs for young people.
DeepMind's AI, equipped with advanced arithmetic and big data analytics skills, is widely expected to offer far-reaching benefits. Its application in the real world is ongoing, particularly in the development of self-driving cars, medical treatment, and dealing with stock market risks. It's also expected to solve more complicated social dilemmas. That's why AI is being referred to as the fourth industrial revolution by IT experts.
I think there will be a fight for data among industries in the future. The firms with data and a way of creating a new service or solution through AI will be on top.
But the real-life adoption of this type of technology not only raises ethical questions, but legal ones as well. For instance, if a self-driving car causes a traffic accident, or if a super-intelligent machine gives a wrong diagnosis, who would be held responsible?
These types of concerns show there's a need to set guidelines and license systems before AI systems go fully mainstream.
The Korea-based KT Economic Research Institute says the country's AI-related market volume will steadily increase to surpass $23 billion by 2030. Kim Jian, Arirang News.
Now, over in the US, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have taken 3 states apiece in the 5 states, voting in the second Super Tuesday primaries. And there are decisive results for the 2 candidates, John Kasich and Marco Rubio, competing in their home states. For more, we have our Oh Soo-young on the line. So, Soo-young, what's been going on in Florida?
Well, Mark, Donald Trump comes out of Florida with almost 46% of the vote, handing a devastating defeat to Senator Marco Rubio, who asserted he'd win in his home state, but has struggled to gain momentum. Rubio dropped out of the race as soon as the results came in, making it a 3-man contest on the Republican side. For the Democrats, Hillary Clinton won the state in a landslide with more than 64% of the vote, double that for her rival Bernie Sanders.
And Soo-young, the other big contest today with a great number of delegates as well is Ohio. What's been going on there and in all the other states voting today?
Ohio Governor John Kasich swept the winner-take-all state with over 45% of the vote, beating Trump by roughly 12,000 votes, according to CNN projections, and breathing new life into his campaign. On the Democratic side, Clinton won Ohio with 56%, again with almost double the votes as Sanders. And for the other states holding primaries today, the results are still coming in, but these are CNN's projections as of 11:50 a.m. Korean time. In North Carolina, Clinton has won with nearly 55%, and Trump also won 40%. Over in Illinois, Clinton leads with 51%, and Trump won by almost 40%. In Missouri, the Democrats are neck and neck, but so far Sanders is leading the race with over 50%. Trump is leading so far with 41.8%, a small margin over Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who has 41.6%. With these results, it looks like Clinton and Trump are the decisive frontrunners in the race. And it's been a particularly victorious night for Hillary Clinton, who has been locked in battle with Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. And on the Republican side, it looks like Trump is much closer to locking up the nomination.
Well, thank you very much, Soo-young, for that report there. Now, staying with international news, and security forces in Belgium and French police are thought to be searching for an unconfirmed number of suspects linked to last year's terror attacks in Paris. Officials say one suspect was killed during a raid on an apartment in Brussels after he exchanged gunfire with police. Belgium's federal prosecutor has confirmed that 4 police officers were injured in that raid. Now, no word yet on exactly who or what the officers were looking for as part of that operation, but there are numerous reports that Salah Abdeslam, the Belgian-born French national who is a prime suspect in the Paris attacks, was not a target of the search. The Islamic State attacks on Paris in November of last year killed 130 people. Investors' eyes are on the US Federal Reserve ahead of its monetary policy decision this week. The Federal Open Market Committee began its two-day meeting in Washington on Tuesday, with the announcement set for Wednesday local time. Most analysts believe Fed policymakers are unlikely to raise rates at this time, but if they see the US economy improving, a hike could be on the horizon, despite the lingering uncertainties in the global economy. Watchers say the Fed will likely leave the target range for the federal funds rate unchanged at 0.25% to 0.5%. However, Fed officials are expected to reduce the number of rate hikes they see this year. Now, some bad news for drivers here in Korea, as the price of gasoline is poised to rise for about a month due to the advance in global oil prices. According to Korea's National Oil Corporation, the average price for 1 litre of gasoline at local gas stations was $1.13 on Tuesday, up slightly from the previous day. Local gas prices had dropped every single day for about 5 months since last October, until a recent rebound in global oil prices. On Monday, US crude futures settled at over $37 a barrel, while Brent finished at $39.53. Oil industry sources say drivers should refuel when they find cheaper stations or fill the tank sooner in order to save some money. Well, those are stories we'll be following on this Wednesday afternoon here in Seoul. Do have a wonderful rest of the day. Goodbye.